Werther.
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 Hello, Werther.
I'm Werther, by the way.
Glad you're a normal person.
Well, let's not say terrible things.
Tell me, what will you be doing with yourself this summer?
I'm off to Europe for expat adventures. Material for my memoir.
The silky and lacy variety?
Something like that.
Seek out smart, confident, progressive women. Real spitfires.
That's good advice.
My sister is 18, so no, she doesn't want to fly down to Miami with you on your sick jet.
I have never wanted anyone more. I met a girl.
Werther?
No, she's incredible. She's smart. She's funny. And she's a reader. Who reads, Paul?
Are you insane?
Incredibly smooth.
Girls are always saying that to me.
Werther, I should have mentioned
You're what?
engaged.
What?
Charlotte loves Albert and you like Charlotte.
What? I met the girl I want to spend the rest of my life with, so there is no way I'm just going to leave town and let her stupid fiancé have her. I'm Werther.
Charlotte told me all about you.
He's perfect, a worthy opponent.
Any indication whatsoever that you want to spend time with me?
Albert cares about his work.
I'm not saying he shouldn't. I love that he's passionate. It's just...
You wish he was that passionate about you.
I know that it's stupid that I like him, but you have Albert. You're being stupid too.
Zipper!
I don't know what to do here.
Use your teeth.
We're trying to
Into this one.
You're going to a shooting range with Albert.
Funny.
He will shoot you with his shotgun.
In the face or in the back?
Face?
Oh, you'd be amazing at murder. Release the pigeon! Is this the starter size?
If you really care for her, then move on.
We're just friends.
You look at all your friends like that?
To me, everything's beautiful.
I heard you had to use a lady gun. How did that make you feel?
Like a big, strong woman.
Hi everyone, welcome to this new episode of Carolyn Talks. This is the podcast / YouTube channel where I'm your host, Carolyn Hayes, film culture critic and a journalist, speak to film creators around the world about their work, the industry, and what inspires them. And today, I'm very happy to be joined by writer and director José Lourenço to talk about his film Young Werther, which I saw last year. We're already in January 2025, the second week, and this film is really intriguing to me, because I had no idea what it was going to be about. I purposely did not read the synopsis for it because I was just like, I'm just going to go in like completely blind. And I was very happy to find out it's kind of like a film, like a modern day Jane Eyre, Pride and Prejudice, like Girl Jane Austen, like those books from that vein. And I didn't know it was an adaptation of the book Young Werther by Johann Wolfgang Goethe. So in my research, I was actually pleasantly surprised to see it was based on that. So, but thank you so much to José for joining me today. Yay!
Oh, thank you so much for having me. This is wonderful. Did you see it at a festival, or did you see it through a screener? What was your? How did you come to it?
I saw it at a post-fest screening for TIFF. So I wasn't able to see it during TIFF itself. But like sometimes we have like screenings after the festivals wrap for like press who were able to see everything. So I got to see it like just after TIFF wrap. So it was a fun screening. Like everyone came up, we were talking about it and everything after the film screening.
Oh, lovely. Yeah. I mean, I'm like you in that I often will go to a film and not research it at all. Like there's like, it's nice to like hear a recommendation from a friend and then be like, I'm just gonna go in blind, just see what happens. And it's a great way to consume a movie.
Yeah, it was. And so I'm just gonna say a bit about this. So the film, as I said, is kind of like in the vein of like Jane Eyre, Jane Austen, and Johann Goethe. This book particularly is in the Sturm und Drang vein of literature, which is like where they are. It was at this point I was doing some research before the Enlightenment. So like the romance in those books is very evocative, like the characters are more freewheeling and they're more like expressive, and I always like, and I was actually talking about this same concept with Celine Song, the filmmaker for oh my gosh, why am I drawing a blank on the name? But it's the film that came out last year. It's the Korean film. But we were talking about how we don't really get films that talk about romance, platonic romance.
Right.
And your film does talk about both. There's eros and then there's pathos. So there's the platonic love, and your film, I think, touches on both very elegantly. So you have like Werther, who's played, I think, very well by Douglas Booth, who falls in love with Charlotte, played by Alison Pill. Like, I'm a huge fan of her, and so Charlotte is almost like an Elizabeth Bennet. She's
Love it.
She's kind of like an Elizabeth Bennet. The way she speaks, I love how you structured the dialogue and how they deliver the lines of dialogue. It is very much like if you watch like an old BBC production of a Jane Austen novel, one of my favorite films. I love Pride and Prejudice, but I also love North and South. And like there's a staccato way that they speak, that they deliver the lines, and you kind of mimic that in this film. So I want to first talk about, just because you adapted the book, you had to translate it in a modern sense. For audiences to be able to not only relate to it, but to like figure out like the rhythms of these things. So talk about structuring the rhythm of the dialogue, because I think that's very important to how the film flows.
I love that question. I love that insight, because it is a very written movie. Like it's meant to evoke the novel itself. The novel is written from a first person perspective of Werther writing these letters to his friend Wilhelm, and complaining about the situation he's in, where he's met this wonderful young woman, and they're clearly connecting. They're clearly longing for each other, but she is engaged to an older man, and it's an untenable situation. And but Werther also likes this older man. Like they're all friends. They're in a platonic space, but they're also in a romantic space. And I love the interplay of those characters and the themes that their story explores. Felt timeless, and it felt like it's as relevant to an audience in Germany and all across Europe in 1774 as it would be to a contemporary audience. But one of the things we wanted to do with the film was to have it feel timeless, to have it feel like a contemporary adaptation, sure, but also like its own thing, like it exists in its own world. So you noticing like the delivery, that's sort of like slightly transatlantic or slightly clipped, slightly BBC kind of delivery. I think some of that is baked into the structures and the rhythm of the language. But some of it is, the majority of it really, all credit to the performers for sort of finding that cadence together and finding that sort of back and forth where, what I love what they're able to do, and which I cannot do, which was made very clear to me whenever I would try to, be on the other side of a reading, is make it sound natural and true to character, and natural in a way that's not like, Alison would often say, that nobody really speaks like this. She's like, but there is a version of a world where, on your best day after your sixth cup of coffee, you might be able to come up with like essentially a half-page monologue of witty dialogue that is, that's interplaying perfectly with someone else who's also on their best day of speech. And I loved how the actors, just found that ease and that comfort in the language and with each other. What a lucky thing to have such talented performers in the film.
Yeah, no, they were all great, because in the thing about the language and it's not just specifically for this film, but it is with like where, for instance, if you're delivering a speech and you have like certain things we have certain points in the speech, you want to make sure you enunciate, because that's what you want the audience to pay attention to. But you flow back and forth between what you would say more like formal speech and like a casual speech, and they do it in this film. Like it's a bit further down in the film that we discussed, but like there's this scene like around at the beginning of the third act where they have their confrontation, where Charlotte is she's fed up with Werther's nonsense. And she gives what I call the quintessential Elizabeth Bennet speech, where she looks at Mr. Darcy. She said, "I could not be prevailed upon myself to fall in love with a man like you," And I love that you put that actual bit of reference in the dialogue in there. I'm like, yes, because I love it. But it's all about for some people, they think like when they're angry, they lose their ability to be very carefully what they say. But for some people, it's actually quite the opposite. Where you're so angry, your speech actually sharpens. Your brain is clicking and your brain is firing. I'm kind of the same way. Like when I'm super angry, I get very quiet. But then when I start talking, I don't stutter. I don't stumble my words. I'm very clear and precise in what I want to say. And that's what the characters do, you know? And it's not just Charlotte. It happens with her friend Melanie, who's played by Amrit Kaur, who's a fantastic actress. I loved her in My
genius.
Dreams.
Yeah.
She's fantastic. And then there's also, Albert, who's Charlotte's fiance, played by Patrick J. Adams. They all have these moments, where they flow very easily through casual modern day speech to a bit more formal way of speaking. And that's a skill. That's a skill that a lot of people actually don't possess, even a lot of actors don't possess. And so that's, I think, one of my favorite things about the film, like just the way they speak. And I think one of the reasons I love it, like I'm from Barbados, a former British colony. But the reason I mention that is because like a lot of how British speech is formed and translates is a part of our dialect, our ethnic dialect. And our speech is like that. We flow very easily. Some people would call it code switching, and it is a form of code switching where we transition from formal speech into like our dialect. But then there's a part of our dialect where the speech actually kind of like reverts back, and it's very tricky to do. And sometimes we don't think about how we're doing it, and it just happens naturally. So that's why I always pay attention to how people speak in films, and that's why I really love how the characters speak in this film.
Well, I love all of that. I mean, it is. I wanted to. I mean, there's two things that I wanted to say that. I love your insight about the difficulty for an actor, even a talented actor, to achieve that. And I think each of the people we're so lucky to have in the film. One of the things we were looking for during casting was like sort of an elite facility for verbal dexterity, because it is quite a talky, verbose film, and there are moments where it could all fall apart, and it could all, there's a lot of plate spinning going on there, because they're not just, Werther and Charlotte, they have that scene where they're waltzing and they're, where she's just starting to crack open a little bit and allow herself to be charmed by him. But for the actors, I mean, Alison she can dance. Doug can also dance, but they really had to rehearse that dance scene. And they're, in the middle of having this exchange that is quite emotional and funny and strange. And they have to find that rhythm in the dialogue, but while they're also engaging in this like quite difficult movement, it's quite challenging. And I was so impressed with how every actor in the film was able to perform under these circumstances. And the other thing that I really identified with what you're saying is with what you were saying about code switching in language and going from sort of informal speech to formal speech. My dad is from Portugal, but my mom is from Canada, and we didn't grow up speaking Portuguese in the house. But I would sort of learn during summers with my grandparents. And then in university, I decided like I'm going to take Portuguese classes and learn to speak properly. And I started learning a very formal version of Portuguese that was being taught by a Brazilian teacher. So I was learning sort of like formal Brazilian Portuguese. And then I would go to the town where my dad is from, which is a small fishing village 2 hours north of Lisbon, where they're speaking continental Portuguese that is very informal and so full of metaphors and idioms and phrases that do not translate literally. And I constantly was just trying to keep up with people and understand where they were going in a conversation that often felt at once very flexible and very inflexible at the same time. It is sort of a unique experience, and one that I never have when I'm speaking English. So it's yeah.
It is, because like I'm like, as I mentioned before, like my Bajan dialect, our dialect are the words that we use a lot of metaphors too, and it's very visual. It's a very visual language. Like we use a lot of things that visual references to describe things. You could be talking about a meal, and the way how we just say sometimes it's just helping you to visualize what you're seeing, you know. And I think kind of like Werther kind of does that because the film is kind of like mostly from his perspective, and he's narrating it, you know, he's writing this story and he's telling it. So he's trying to like figure out a way to like relay what he's experiencing to the reader of his memoir. And he's relating it in a way that is not necessarily visual, but it's very detailed and is very emotionally driven. So like the reader could, in a sense, like relate to what he's saying without being able to like visualize what he's describing, you know, because he's not saying, for instance, what Charlotte is wearing. You know, he's not talking about what she's wearing. He doesn't describe the rooms, but he's giving the reader or us, the audience, enough to pick up on, to get exactly what he's getting to in the scene. And in talking about Werther, this guy, he's a giant raving red flag to me. I'm like, no, and I'm so serious. He's charming. But the reason I say he's a red flag is like his first introduction to Charlotte, he just goes and sits down next to her. She's sitting with her two friends, her sister and her friends, and he's just gonna launch himself in their conversation. And for women, that's a huge no-no. Like, we are having women time. Like, I am not gonna entertain you. Like, you know. Yeah. And then he turns up at her house the next day, sitting on the steps. Like, no, you gotta go. So like, when Albert invited him in, I would have been like, no, you're not bringing this strange man into my house with my 6 siblings. What are you doing? But he's able to get away with it because he's charming, you know, he's fast, he's very boyish, you know, he's very immature. You can tell he may have worldly experience, but he's very immature when it comes to social interactions, you know, because he's so very gung-ho on his own, what he wants. You know, he's very he lives the world with blinders on, where he only sees what he wants to see, he hears what he wants to hear, he believes what he wants to believe. So talk to me about working with Douglas to play Werther, because I was looking back, because I was like, I saw him and it was just, I know this face. And he was in the Pride and Prejudice zombie Pride and Prejudice. And he played Mr. Bingley. And ironically, Werther is more like Mr. Bingley than he is like a Mr. Darcy. So talk to me about casting Douglas, and like perhaps if you use his previous acting experience in that film and the character of Bingley as inspiration for Werther.
Yeah, I mean, the first time that I noticed Doug was in the British film The Riot Club, Lonnie Sharpig's 2014 film set in a very posh school setting. And that film starred like every young, like handsome British actor at the time. Like you look through the IMDb of that and it's crazy, the names that pop out. But he really struck me in that film, and then I followed him for years afterwards. When you know, we interviewed so many people for the role of Werther, and I always felt like it was this really tricky balancing act. And with Doug, when I was first like thinking about him, I was like, God, he's so good. I was like, but I wonder, like he has that like matinee idol look to him, and that very sort of classic, like strong chin, leading man, very posh. You know, I was like, is this going to translate? But from the very first time that we spoke on our interview, Doug as a person is so funny and so kind and so gentle and gregarious, and he makes everyone around him feel good and feel important. That is just like, he's a very giving person, and you know, he was so lovely on set with everyone. It really came through. But it was I think it was that more than almost anything else I'd seen him in that convinced me like he was going to be Werther, because Werther is, you know, he has this charming rake. He's this this dashing guy, but as you say, he is a red flag, and that red flag needed to have a green flag on the other side. You know, when it's rippling in the wind, you want to get those hints of the green flag from. And I think that's what Doug really brought to it, where he brought like a an innocence to a character that is quite entitled, a boyishness to a character who is, you know, behaving in somewhat despicable ways at times. Like, you know, I think it would be very easy to initially dislike Werther and dislike him through the whole film. But I think what Doug does with that character is, just imbues him with like an openness and a likability that, even when he's doing these objectively red flaggish things, we're open to the idea that he can grow and change. We're open to the idea that he's not a pure villain in the same way that no one's a pure hero, you know? And I think that's one of the things that really struck me about the book when I first read it. There's no easy answers to any of it. There's no easy relationships. Even the best relationships, even Charlotte and Albert's relationship, though it's a stable, loving relationship, the spark isn't there, and they've sort of settled into a routine, and you know, they're almost taking each other for granted a little bit, and not with any malice. It's just relationships take work. That's no great insight. That's just the truth. And you know, not to ramble on about this, but I think for Charlotte, and one of the reasons we forgive Werther a lot is because we start to see Werther through Charlotte's eyes. And you know, she's someone who was denied her youth. You know, she was thrust too soon into the role of a caregiver for the children, and as a mothering role. And Werther comes into her life, this whirlwind of energy and laughter, and sort of becomes a catalyst for Charlotte to be able to have a youth, have that experience that she was unjustly denied. So I think, you know, when we look at Werther as an asset to Charlotte, I think that also softens some of the aspects of him that could otherwise be red flagged.
Yeah, because if the tone of this film was different, it would very much be a thriller. You know?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. You could do one of those trailers where you change the music and you
flip the tone around, change the music around, just add a bit more ominous tones to put some more violins, a bit more oboes into the classical pieces, and this would be a thriller, right? But like Douglas's portrayal of Werther does make it work, because the thing with him is that he's intelligent. He's a very intelligent young man, you know, but he's very aimless. You know, and a lot of that comes with his privilege. He's wealthy, he's white, he's handsome, he's good looking, he's accustomed to getting what he wants. And so like Douglas balances that with also where there's capability to also listen. So the reason he's able to like attract Charlotte and get her to open up to him so easily, and even Albert, you know, is that he listens to people. He does pay attention to what they say, what they do, you know, and there's a difference between, and he hears them, you know, because you can listen to someone and you're not really paying attention to what they're saying, but he hears them and he internalizes what they're saying, he processes it. And so like he provides that for Charlotte, because where Albert is at his life professionally is he isn't able to do that for Charlotte, you know, because he's looking forward to the wedding, but he's also working on this pro bono case while he's also working on the cases that he has to do, the regular cases for his law firm. So he has all of this happening, and he is making himself physically available to Charlotte and the kids, you know. He's not absent. He's very, very present, but he's just not emotionally present, you know, or mentally present, I should say, because he's very emotionally. What I love about how Patrick plays Albert too is that I found he's very tactile. You know, he's always touching her. You know, he's always like making sure that he's somehow physically connected to her whenever they're in a room together. But if he walks past, he brushes her. He's holding her hand. He gives her eye contact, but it's just that he's not able to emotionally be present for her emotionally the way that Werther is. And the reason that Werther can do it, because he doesn't have any responsibilities. You know, he has nothing else to think of. He saw Charlotte, and that's his only priority. You know, he's living in a hotel, so he doesn't even have to worry about how to get up and make a meal. You know, he doesn't have to get up. You know, he needs an outfit. He goes and gets a suit made. So talk about Charlotte and Albert and how they're dynamic, because they genuinely do love each other. You know, and he's there for her. He's present for her, and she appreciates that. But she also wants a bit more from him emotionally, but she doesn't know how to say. You know, and I think part of that, because her parents died when she was so young, she didn't have anyone to really tell her how to make herself, what's the word I'm looking for? How to verbalize what her wants, you know? She can show him, but she doesn't know how to say it. She doesn't know how to communicate with him that way, because she didn't have her parents to show her. And her sister, like Sissy and Melanie, is not helpful.
I mean, so many good, strong insights there. I want to like respond to all of them individually. I mean, on that last note, I mean, I think you're so right. Like Charlotte, you know, and I think this is true of anyone who's a caregiver or a parent. or I should say like a mother specifically, that it's always about someone else, right? Like you're always putting yourself second to the needs of the children, or putting yourself second to the needs of the family. And you're right, like not asking really for what you want. And there is a difference between being physically present and being emotionally attuned, because in a glance, I think like, the audience can see like exactly what the issues are. It's not Albert is this monster who's obsessed with winning at work, or he's this evil man. He's a good man. He's an upstanding member of the community. I think he represents a masculine ideal that's very interesting, where he's intelligent, but he doesn't use his intelligence to belittle people. He's strong, but he doesn't use that to intimidate. He's yeah, and I love that you noticed the physical contact, and I want to give all credit to the actor there. That's Patrick, like understanding that that's necessary, that he can't be someone who is physically removed as well as emotionally removed. It's having those connections, because like I think we all do want to root for a healthy, stable relationship, even one that no relationship can fulfill every person's needs. Everyone is an individual, and what Charlotte is exploring with Werther, that's a need. It's a need and it's a want, and but nothing is ever, no need or want can define your life. We're all constantly juggling the demands of work, of family, of school, of obligation in your community, with what makes you feel whole, or what excites you or energizes you. And can't begrudge Charlotte exploring that and having that made available to her. I'm blanking on one other thing I wanted to respond to. Oh, you're just saying so many insightful, smart things that I need to be like writing them down as we're as we're going through. Sissy and Melanie are not helpful ultimately. I mean, I think there are like moments where, there was a version of a script earlier where Melanie was even less helpful, where she was like really almost like pushing the relationship, but it felt like that was something we needed to temper a little bit and have her be someone who's giving Charlotte permission to be a little selfish, to be a little more like Werther, and I love films and books where you see that, where you see the characters affecting each other, because as you say, like Werther he's a boy. He's this impulsive, no responsibilities, all the privilege in the world, can do whatever he wants at any moment. And in that moment, all he wants to do is focus on Charlotte. And I think there's something captivating about seeing a person like that, a person whose life is so easy, reckon with a situation where life is not going to be exactly what you want it to be at every moment. To see a little bit of a comeuppance for someone who has proceeded as if at all times. And I think that's and again, Doug plays it so beautifully. It's where he ends up in the film from where he is at the beginning. Just the nuance and the subtleties he brings to it, and all the actors bring to their roles. It's I don't know. I love it.
Yeah. I think we have time for one last question. So,
sure.
So something that I wanted us to talk about briefly, just that would encapsulate everything, is there's this scene that happens where he takes Charlotte to go and take ice cream to Albert at the meeting. So this scene happens, I would say, around like the middle of the film, but the reason I say encapsulates everything, even how the film ends on like on a growth arc for Werther, is that I remember when I saw it the first time, I was just like, what are they doing? First of all, this is impractical. How are you taking ice cream to someone in the middle of the middle of the day to an office on a stick? Get a cup, and like that one thing, just that one aspect of it, like everything else ignored, just the fact that they didn't even think to get a cup, that Charlotte, who is accustomed to looking after children, who knows like practical solutions to everything, ignored the impracticality of that whole situation. I think to me, it kind of spoke to how Charlotte herself didn't even fully understand Albert. Albert understood her. You know, he just like Werther devoted so much time and effort into understanding her and her siblings and have a relationship with them. But it kind of showed me that she also didn't understand him. She didn't really take time to understand him, because I'm like, where's the cup, Charlotte? You know, like, where's the cup? So like, talk to me about that scene, because I just found that scene very fascinating.
It's, again, that was a very it was a very intentional thing, that it was an impractical thing to be bringing to him. Interrupting your partner at work, especially the kind of work that Albert is doing in the film, is already so reckless and so childish. It's what you expect of, you know. I was on a interview earlier today, and my 7-year-old is home from school today. She's sick, and she came and she was like, Daddy, can I have another popsicle? And I was like, of course you can, my love. Like, go get another popsicle. Because that's, you know, there's just that impulse that, like, hey, this needs to happen right now, no matter what else is going on around you. And at that point in the film, Charlotte is, you know, taking on some of Werther's qualities. She's taking on some of his impulsiveness, his desire to sort of like uplift and bring a little joy, no matter the consequences, to make everything seem fun and like a party. And I think Charlotte is like in his headspace and almost trying to access Albert in a way that Werther has been accessing her. And yeah, you're right. There would be a cup. And at the beginning of the film, you see Werther with the cup of gelato. Werther's at the beginning, even in that moment, he's interrupting them. He's got the cup, but later she has the ice cream on a stick, because that is melt right down all over your hand. You're going to bring that into the office. That's sticky. That's something that the child holds the ice cream on the stick, and the adult eats it out of the cup. And I love that scene. I also love Werther. This was a Doug improv on the day. I also love as Doug is watching Albert sort of dress down Charlotte as if she's a child who's misbehaved. We don't hear what they're saying, and they're in that room. And Werther's watching, he just brings the ice cream up and just takes a solemn bite of the ice cream. It just makes me laugh every time.
Yeah, he's like, "Ooh, this is a show drama." He's like,
yeah, that's him sipping that gelato tea. Yeah,
I know, right? I know we have to wrap it now, but where was that gelato store? Because I've been trying to figure out where it was in Toronto. I'm like, do I know this place?
Oh, if you don't know it, you should go. So Barapé is a real place. It's at St. Clair and oh God, where's the cross street? It's not far from like Oakwood and St. Clair. Yeah, I should know the exact address, but check it out. Barapé. Come to Bar. Everyone go to Barapé. It's amazing. The gelato really is outstanding.
I will try my best to get there, because one thing I love about being in Toronto and watching films that I know are filmed in Toronto is just be like, I've been to that place, I've walked past there. I'm like, it's a very unique aspect of living in a city like Toronto. But thank you so much, José, for taking the time for talking. I wish we had more time. I have so much more questions, but thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. This was honestly one of the most fun interviews I've done around the film. So insightful, so thoughtful, so smart. Thank you so much for this. It was very enjoyable.
Thank you. Congratulations to you and the entire cast, and to the crews, for who I know, like, no film is easy to make. So I appreciate all the time and the effort. So congratulations to you and everyone.
Thank you.